Hi, everybody. I'm James D. Jones for the Friends of the Blues concert series being brought to you today by none other than Ross's Rock and Roll Emporium, 7,000 square feet superstore dedicated to the rock and roll lifestyle, located at 400 East North Street in Bradley, Illinois. And I'm here to tell you, folks, whether you're into t-shirts, they've got the largest selection of rock and roll t-shirts around. Whether you're into vinyl, whether you're into CDs or skateboards or lava lamps, tapestries, they have a glass shop in there. They've got all kinds of things. Be sure to check them out. Clothing, incense, you name it. It's 7,000 square feet dedicated to the rock and roll lifestyle. Now, we're getting ready for another Friends of the Blues concert series that's coming up
May 7th
at the American Legion in Bradley, Illinois on 835 Broadway Street. And it's going to be fantastic. Let me set the stage proper for our guest who's going to be joining us, who's going to be performing that day, May
7th.
And let's set the stage proper right here, right now. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages and sizes, we don't just welcome a musician, we welcome a force of nature forged in the fire of Chicago's blues tradition. This is a man who just didn't study the blues, he lived it, he absorbed it, he survived it. And from the floors of Buddy Guy's Legends to the world stage, he has paid his dues the old school way, earning every single note, every scar, every ounce of soul. A former right-hand guitarist, the legendary Buddy Guy, he's shared stages with icons like Carlos Santana, Robert Plant, and John Mayer, not as a spectator, but as an equal in the conversation. With multiple critical acclaimed albums and a strong presence on SiriusXM's Bluesville channel inspired by B.B. King, and a reputation for performances that just don't entertain but hit you where you live. He stands as a modern day torchbearer of a timeless sound because, folks, blues isn't polite. It isn't tidy. It doesn't ask for permission, and neither does this man. And on May 8th, as part of the Friends of the Blues concert series at the American Legion in Bradley, Illinois, well, you won't just hear the blues, you'll feel it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frank Bang. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for having me here with you today.
All right. Well, it's going to be a great show. A lot of people are looking forward to it. And, you've got quite a impressive record in your blues history, I guess you should say. Mm-hmm. So, you've mentioned and said that blues doesn't apologize. So where in your life did you learn to stop apologizing and just be, man?
I think, growing up in Chicago, the one thing I've noticed looking back on that over the years, Chicago, we're called the Midwest, right? We're called the second city, but we're in the Midwest, is what they call us.
Right.
But there really is no place like the Midwest. And what I mean by that is, we're not quite as in your face as the East Coast people are. But if you cross a line or try to BS us, we will definitely voice our opinion and let you know where we stand with you. Yes. And at the same time, we're not quite as live everybody, let them be free, kind of California vibe of the West Coast that originated there. But yet we have some of that in us too. So I really think that that's where it all comes from, is being born and raised in Chicago, and when you know your place, when you're a younger man growing up in your family or in your community, you have these examples around you every day in life. And a lot of mine just happened to, move this needle in the blues 5 or 6 times in their life,
Wow. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's start there. How in the world did you get into the blues, man?
Again, growing up in Chicago, I remember when Mayor Byrne used to do the Chicago Fest.
Yes.
One of our neighbors was a long haul trucker and a biker, and he knew, I think the guy's name was Pete Special, who played in Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows. So we went down on a Sunday, and I think it was a Sunday, might have been a Saturday, at a pretty young age, when the Blues Brothers movie was, still in theaters and things like that in that era. And in that course of that day, we saw Big Twist and Lonnie Brooks and Coco Taylor. We saw Muddy Waters with Johnny Winter. Now, I didn't realize at the time I was seeing Muddy Waters with Johnny Winter. This was just part of Chicago on a day,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think so that the Blues Brothers movie as well, the original, because, being at a young age and getting turned on to Ray Charles, James Brown, Booker T and the MGs, all from this movie. And then the soundtrack to the movie too. Not only was the soundtrack great, but, they're listening to Johnny Lee Hooker in the car. They're listening to Sam and Dave and things like that. And it gave me exposure to that stuff that I probably wouldn't have normally had.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. So I think, again, you go back to Chicago and, what do we know? What are we passionate about in Chicago? We're blue collar people. We love our family and our sports. We work hard. We like to party hard. You know what I mean? That's what Chicago is really all about. Yeah. And I think all those elements were just, on display at a young age, whether you realized it or not. I mean, I'm wearing my Cubs hat, but I'm also a Sox fan because when we were young and my dad was a cop, after coming home from school and watching Brick House and the Cubs on GN, at the end of your school day, my dad would pick me and my brother up in his cop car and whisk us over to Comiskey and catch a couple innings in our pajamas.
Oh, so, nice.
I mean, that city, I owe it so much.
Yeah.
And it's definitely made me who I am in so many ways. Even being now, I moved away from Chicago in 2015 and I've been living here in Florida. It's the thing that, I miss on a daily. It's the thing that I'm proud of when I run into people that realize I really am from Chicago and raised in it. And we have these conversations about this place. Right? I'm fortunate in that respect to come from that beautiful, what I think is one of the greatest cities in the world.
Agreed. So you got bit by the blues bug early on in life. How does a kid from Chicago get into the blues scene?
It's funny. I took a job with the Hard Rock Cafe while I was trying to go to school in Chicago. Because there wasn't any blues clubs where I graduated high school from. We lived in Chicago on the west side in the Austin district until middle school. And then my dad moved us out to McHenry, Illinois, where I went to middle school and to high school. There's no real blues there, but a great life, and so grateful for the fact that I got to be a city kid who also learned about the rural, because back then McHenry was farm town. Now it's like Naperville in a way that's been so developed, but it really was farm town, and it was a great work ethic to learn. Got to do things I never would have done in the city. Drove cars around at 15. You do that in the city, you're in juvie. In McHenry, you were just running family errands, right? So that definitely helped form me who I was. I took a job at the Hard Rock Cafe in Chicago when I was 19, and I started getting exposed to it there. I got to see Buddy Guy one night at the Limelight, which was next to it, and that kind of blew me away. But I took a transfer from Chicago to San Diego to La Jolla with the Hard Rock Cafe to be a kitchen manager. And I was there, maybe about 6-8 months. And we would do these radio shows in the afternoon that have a local radio station, which as a Cub fan was hard to deal with at first because every Friday I would have to comp Steve Garvey's lunch after he did his radio broadcast there from the Hard Rock. And for those either long-term Cub fans, you know, Steve Garvey with the Padres killed us in one of those playoff series in the 80s every game. And he never and he never let me forget it, because my Hard Rock Cafe hat would say Chicago across it, you know, every day. And one of the days I came in, I got a call from one of the managers, the general manager, and I wasn't supposed to come in early on the Friday and say, hey, can you come on down here? We need your help with something. So I got in there, and at the time, while I was messing around with guitar, I had a pig nose amp and a Tom Schultz Rockman, which was this little device that you could plug your guitar into, had a couple amp settings, and then you'd run some headphones in. So when I was killing time at the Hard Rock sometimes, I would get the Allen wrenches and I would take some guitars off the wall when no one would know it, and I'd go in the office and I'd play them. I mean, really nice ones like Pete Townsend's Les Paul.
Ooh, nice.
Steve Stevens and Joe Satriani's guitars, you know, because this was the late 80s. And these were great guitars. So I get a call to come into work early, and I get there, and the general manager, who was also from Chicago, Howard, said, good news, bad news. I said, okay, what's that? He goes, well, bad news. I know all about the guitars you've been taking off the wall. And I really thought I was getting fired or sent back home to Chicago, because I've been doing it for the whole time since I'd been there, right? Yeah. I thought I was getting away with it. And he goes, follow me in the office. And he goes, I want to show you the good news. We get in the office, and the good news, and there's Stevie Ray Vaughan, who's getting ready to do a radio interview at that station at the Hard Rock to promote the In Step record, the first record he made after he was sober. Yeah. And we get in there, and he's like, Stevie, this is Frank. And, you know, in Chicago in the 80s especially, not only was Stevie Ray Vaughan a very popular artist, when he put out that song, Willie the Wimp, which was about a guy from Chicago, he really did break through on mainstream rock radio as well in Chicago as well. So we all knew who he was, and I was a fan. Yeah. I had some cassettes. For those of you who are younger, might not know what those are, of his. So I was a fan, and I introduced him, and I told him, well, the bad news is, guys, I don't know how to break into the glass case to get this Jimi Hendrix acoustic you guys want me to get for Stevie Ray. I only know how to get these guitars that are hanging out the walls off, you know? And so while we're having this conversation, like, I don't know if you're aware of this, James, you know, you don't realize that we even have a Chicago accent until you travel around. Right. No, you're right. So here's me and the other kitchen manager in there having a debate, you know, in a nice, friendly Chicago way about what I can do and what I shouldn't do anymore. And he goes, where are you guys from? You're the only two that don't sound like surfers around here, because we were in La Jolla in Cali, and we both said Chicago. And, you know, and that's when I interjected again about being a big fan and listening to his music in Chicago. And he like stopped me. And he said, you should stop listening to me if you're from Chicago, and you should listen to Buddy Guy and James Cotton and Junior Wells. And I had heard of Buddy Guy. I had seen him perform before. So I took that to heart. I went to his concert that night, and he was fantastic, as Stevie Ray Vaughan always was. Right. And then after the concert, the next day, I had the day off. I went down into PB, which is a little surf town outside of La Jolla. And I went to the discount bin, and I bought all the Chicago blues I could get in cassette that I could afford. Right. And I had fallen in love with a record before I had left called Showdown, which all had these great blues guys in it. But then I bought like a Best of History, and, you know, it really hit me being away from the place that I grew and loved about, man, I probably messed up, you know, moving away from this place to really hear this music on a regular. I went on my 21st birthday to a blues club on Rush Street, and, you know, I'd had a fake ID in Chicago, so I was getting into bars at 19 all the time, but I couldn't get into this blues club on Division Street. And James, it's probably because I didn't look the part.
Yeah.
You know, I looked 19 and 20 when I would have a fake ID with a buddy's name on it. He's like, Phil Topper, you're not Phil Topper. Get out of here, kid. So when I turned 21, all my buddies came down from McHenry that I went to high school with.
Yeah.
And they were like, where we want to go? And I'm like, Rush Street. And they were like, why? We've been going to Rush Street for like 3 years. Why now are we going to Rush Street? We can go anywhere. And we went to a blues bar that night that had been turning me away.
Right.
And while the blues had really hit me, what really made a connection that night was that same blues band. I got to know those guys later in life. They were not only killing it on the blues, but they were playing Missing You by the Rolling Stones.
Ooh.
Leading, you know, and doing a little ZZ Top in between songs, and even did some Led Zeppelin at the end of the second set. And all of a sudden this connection of all this rock music I'd been listening to and the blues, it just all came together. Like in my head, it finally made sense.
Yeah.
And it really put me on a path to kind of dive into that. So, you know, I spent some time at the Hard Rock. I took a promotion, got transferred to Texas, really hated being, you know, after my third year of being away and not being in this beautiful place like La Jolla, really was getting homesick and wanted to go back home. And not long after Stevie Ray Vaughan passed away in that crash, I quit. There was an argument with management about how much of my bonus they were going to dock me because I wasn't shaving all the time before I came to the kitchen line. And I looked at all the money I had been saving through labor and cutting kitchen costs and thought, you know, I don't want to get screwed by a corporation anymore. And I'm at 23. Now's the time to make this break. And I moved back home to Chicago. And I had all these corporate jobs offered from Let Us Entertain You and different companies like that.
Yeah.
And I thought about going back to the stock exchange, which was something I had to start working at when I was 15 during the summers.
Yeah.
I had decent job offers. I knew that wasn't going to be something I wanted to do every day for the rest of my life.
Right.
And there was a Thanksgiving weekend in 1990. I think it was 1990. It was Thanksgiving weekend, 1989.
Okay.
Buddy guy was still playing his club one weekend a month. So I went, hey, we're going to go in for this job interview, but what we're really going to do is hang out with our cousin and go see this buddy guy dude. And we did. And I got back home that night and there were so many things that just like, I can't even explain it. The experience of the music.
Yeah.
Buddy and his band performed that night. That was one thing. Seeing this raw venue that was doing so many things wrong after coming from the Hard Rock, where we'd put a shower curtain with a logo on it and sell it to you. And these guys were doing so many things wrong. I thought maybe I could find a place here. I went home that night back to my parents' house in McHenry. It was football season. My dad got up early to get his football bets in, is really what he was doing. So he was watching like Jimmy the Greek and stuff like that. And he noticed, you know, after a couple hours of sleep that I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and had stayed up late because, you know, McHenry from Chicago, you know, you leave a blues club at 1 a.m, you're probably not going to get there till about 3. And then I got home and I was jacked up from the ride and sipped a little tequila. I probably didn't get to sleep till like 5 or 6. And my dad at like 9 a.m. knew this. So he was like, what are you on? You know, the old Chicago cop. What are you on that you haven't slept? And I said, nothing. I mean, a little tequila, maybe some weed, but nothing. A buddy guy, you know. I saw this show and I you know, and I started playing my electric guitar unplugged around him while we watched sports, the morning shows. And I remember after watching the Mike Ditka show, he said something to me like, can you make any money doing that? And I said, I didn't know what he was talking about. I thought he was talking about sitting on his couch. And I thought he was just being a smart ass. And I said, you know, Dad, the F if I know, except, you know, I threw the whole world in it, the word in there.
Right.
And I didn't know what he was talking about, you know, at first.
Right.
And he goes, I'm not sitting on my couch, smart ass. I'm talking about the guitar. And again, I said, I don't know, Dad. And he didn't say anything else. And then somewhere after the Mike Ditka show, my dad, who had, served in the Army and worked for the Sun-Times and was a Chicago police officer, and then had his own limo business, and then left to manage car dealerships and was still doing sales and managing car dealerships at this age, said to me, I've been trying to get you to quit that thing since you brought it home, and you're not gonna, the guitar. And Frank, I haven't really enjoyed any of the jobs I've had, since I was driving the Sun-Times newspaper trucks in the morning.
Mm.
And I was like, really, Dad? You didn't enjoy being a police officer? Because it's a lot of stress. Things like that. And I didn't understand at that point.
Right.
He said, if you can find a way to make a living at that, you should, because you're going to do it anyway. No matter what, you're going to do something with that guitar. So when he said that to me, James, I thought he was like giving me like a little karmic knowledge about, well, I should get a job at a music venue. So that following Monday, I had a job interview. I went to it. They offered me a job I didn't want to take. And I went to Buddy's Club, and I waited till the manager opened up the door, and I hit him with my resume, and he looked at my resume, and he's like, oh, you're way too overqualified for this place. He goes, I have a door slot 1 day a week on Thursdays I need to fill that might get you occasionally, if we have a big show like Buddy Guy or something like that, might turn into 2 days a week. But that's, all I got. Mm-hmm. And I said, what's it pay? And he's like, $60 cash under the table. And I took it. And what I didn't realize at the time was I went back home and my mom was like, hey, did you take that job? I said, no, I got another job. So, oh, what'd you get? And I just moved back home from being gone for 3 years. Right. I'm staying on my mom's couch, And she goes, what job did you take? I said, I got a door job. And my mom's an old Irish broad still with us. And she was like, you took a door job. Okay. They have that way of saying something back to you. So maybe you realize how stupid you're being. Just repeating everything. Right. And she worked out all the details. And then finally said, so you're taking a door job, making $60, 60 miles away in one direction, 1 day a week. And I said, Mom, I know this sounds crazy, but there's just something about this place I can't explain to you. Yeah. And she, okay. And then, I went and did that Thursday. That Thursday was Magic Slim and the Teardrops. It was every Thursday with Magic Slim and the Teardrops. Okay. With John Primer in the band. And if you're going to get hooked on Chicago blues, the gut rock blues that Chicago has always been known about, there's no well that's deeper than Magic Slim and the Teardrops, especially when John Primer was there. Nice. And that every Thursday turned into something that to this day I still can't shake. All these years later, that's still the gut bucket blues that hits me in the chest every single time I hear it. And then the life, when I started working there, I always want to try to do better for myself. So what started off as a door job turned into me running the merchandise, and then being their full-time door, and then being a night manager, and then being the assistant general manager and assistant booking agent. So like the whole life came out of it. And I mean, if you're surrounded by that music, those people, that caliber of talent, right, on a daily basis, there's going to be some stuff, if you're paying attention, that you're going to learn. And, right. and I feel like I went to Blues University because of that.
It sounds like. Yeah. Wow. So you start off doing the door. You worked your way up, surrounded by all these great blues legends. I mean, you were in, like you said, Blues University 101. What happened from there?
Well, all the guys that worked there in one way, shape, or form played guitar. Whether they were door guys or bar backs. And the other thing that Buddy was really cool about at the time is he had the basement. One side was used for supplies for the bar. The other side, he kept his gear in, and he let one of the guys who was in a heavy metal band use it as a rehearsal studio. Oh. So you'd go in there early, and be down in there jamming with, like, say, another barback on guitar and Chris Kane or Michael Coleman or Luther Guitar Junior Johnson. These guys were playing later that night would hear you come down the stairs, and next thing you know, you're jamming with Chris Kane for 40 minutes or things like that. That was just always happening. And then one night after Michael Coleman coming down, my parents had come down to show them the club for the first time, and they were sitting in the audience. And because I had jammed with Michael Coleman, he actually called me up to play, like, in the second set, which blew my mind. And when I played, you know, I mean, I probably just, knowing me, I probably at the time was thinking, like, all right, just try to remember every Stevie Ray Vaughan lick you can kind of play and don't mess this up. And got done playing and got a standing ovation from the house. Wow. And then over time, I'd start hanging and sitting with more people. And then once I got promoted there and I was really at the club 5-6 nights a week, I started getting calls from guys like John Primer going, hey, what are you doing Sunday and Monday night? I need, you know, I'd be like, I'm here every Monday. Come on, John, you know this. Oh, damn, I was going to hire you to play rhythm guitar over at the checkerboard or things like that, you know? So I just started spending a little more time in music, spending a little bit of what little off time I'd had was for music. And again, that venue, that life gave me access to so many people that someone who was just kind of an okay blues guitarist back then probably wouldn't have had access to. Wow. And then I got to know him more personally. And I'm spending time with guys like Danny Gatton or John Primer or Lonnie Brooks, or playing pool with Otis Rush, or sitting at the bar with Junior Wells and Sugar Blues for a couple hours before a show kicks off. It just, so much stuff started happening that it became a thing. And me and Wayne Baker Brooks, Lonnie's son, were really good friends. So when we'd close Buddy Guys down at 2 a.m., we'd go to the Mines and watch somebody till 4, and then go to my apartment and pick records apart till 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning, and then rinse and repeat and do it all over again type of thing, you know? Yeah. So that was really a huge part of it as well. There was definitely something that was inside me to want to get bigger or better at this art form, but also I was around people living in the Mecca. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, I respect everybody's scene. I'm sure New York City and Memphis and St. Louis and New Orleans. I love the scene in New Orleans. Yeah. But during the 80s into the 90s in Chicago, I don't think there was a better blues scene in the world. And we had all these, you know, legends that were still around us mixed in with these guitar ninjas that were backing them up, that are guys now like, you know, like Rico McFarland, you know, or Melvin Taylor, guys that could do all the Joe Bonamassa stuff before it was cool to do. But when they were up there with the blues guys, they would respect the music and back up Jimmy Johnson or guys like that respectfully. And then they'd get their song. And then Will Crosby would be playing behind his back with his teeth or something like that. You're like, showing you, you know, the stuff that you brought to the table from rock might have a place too. You know, it was a big, huge melting pot of just fantastic talent.
Wow. So from there, you basically cut your teeth in this blues university right in the heart of Chicago during one of the best blues eras in Chicago.
Absolutely.
You obviously are learning and adapting and borrowing and taking and giving. What was the next step? What got you to the next level?
Hanging with musicians that, you know, there's an old saying, James, if you want to be good at something, get around people who are a lot better than you. Yeah. Yeah. And I started hanging around musicians on a daily, and then started taking jobs. I mean, I went on the road in, not often, but occasionally with Larry McRae as a road manager while he's opening up for B.B. King or George Thorogood, you know, things like that, where I got to see the business on a whole nother side too. Mm-hmm. And then started playing in a band called The Buzz. And, you know, we'd play the one weekend night I was off from Buddies, and maybe one weekday if I was off from Buddies, as much as we could. And we started doing gigs out and gaining some popularity. And I just kind of hit a wall with Buddy Guy's Club where I couldn't really ask him to make any more money. I was making as much money as a general manager per week. I just probably wasn't getting as big a bonus, and kind of had maxed out. So I I say this with great pride. I'm pretty sure to this day, in the Buddy Guys Clubs opened, I believe, in '89, and is still to this day around. I believe I am the only manager in the history of Buddy Guys Legends that has never been fired. Because I just hit a wall and was and quit. And I didn't want to leave. I just couldn't make any more money. And you
were spinning your tires in the mud.
Yeah, I've been in the same place for a while.
Yeah.
And I couldn't just enjoy the good times anymore. I had to start thinking about some other stuff.
Right.
And I decided to give music a full-time spin. And I remember the last shift I worked after giving my notice, Junior Wells came in to the club like he would often do on a Friday night to get his band together before they went out on the road. He'd come in stone cold sober and sit at the bar, and they'd all accumulate, and they'd get in the van, and they'd go do their shows. And he came in, and once he drew the van in, he had a road manager that drove the van, so he'd order a drink. And he was getting ready to order a drink, and I said, "Hey, Junior, let me buy you a drink. It's my last night."
Okay.
And he got like this worried look on his face. Wait. What you mean your last night? I said, "Yeah, man, I'm quitting, and I'm gonna go start focusing on another career." And wait, what are you gonna do? And I said, "I'm gonna start focusing on being a musician." And this big smile hit his face. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna be fine. I was worried about you for a second there," because he had played with me a bunch of times,
Yeah.
And that was a really nice thing, like an unexpected. I mean, I never would have dreamed of him saying that to me in a million years. But here he was, one of the patriarchs for 40 years of that music, telling me I was making the right decision. So I did. And I started focusing on music. We got in the van and started going everywhere anyone would let us play, not just Chicago, but Texas, California. If we could hook up a do-it-yourself tour, we did it. And we made it we were fully committed to that band. We started doing national shows with all kinds of bands, from National Blues Guys to everything from Flaming Lips, Government Mule.
Yeah.
All kinds of different stuff. And I had known Warren in Government Mule from Buddy Guy's Club.
Right.
And was the first guy who booked Government Mule at Chicago.
Okay.
And I would always get the dates nobody wanted. Like Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or Carbondale, the ones that weren't attractive to other people on a tour that they'd pass on. My band was starting to get those offers, so we would do those. And next thing you know, we're getting ready to do a record with Capricorn Records. We get an offer from them because they like the band, and we pick Warren Haynes as a producer, and that's around the middle of 1999. And then by the fall of 1999 and around September, I got word through Buddy Guy's manager that he was looking to make a change and maybe hire a guitar player.
Ooh.
And when I found that out, I could make a record with Warren Haynes in my band for Capricorn, or I can join Buddy Guy's band. And it really was not a hard decision at all.
No.
I had to call Warren Haynes at home and have this conversation with him. And he was, in seconds, said, "Frank, we can always make a record together. You have to go join Buddy Guy's band. You're coming full circle, doing this." And he was right. And I joined in 99. I stayed with him till 2005. And I mean, my life had been pretty cool with the people that I got to play with, meet, jam. But then with Buddy, it's like a whole nother level, James.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
How did it feel coming back, but as a musician?
Yeah. It was a verification of a long, like, what the heck am I doing here? You know what I mean? It validated a lot of stuff in my head that I had been working on for the last 12 years, for sure. It's funny. When I was 18, I started really getting into guitar, like trying to learn
Right.
it. I was going to college, and I had a guitar magazine. I love Carlos Santana.
Right.
And in that magazine, he said, if you don't have mastered the skills, the knowledge of music by 18, 19 years old, you're kind of wasting your time. And I thought long and hard about it right at 18. Like, as I was reading that, like, wow, really behind the 8 ball here.
Yeah.
You know, but at the age of 32, I'm playing with Carlos Santana, and he's bowing to me backstage, and I'm picking him up off the ground saying, you can't do that, man. You know, I'm not going to let you bow to me. And we even had a conversation later that night on Buddy's bus about that. And he listened patiently. Carlos is a very funny man.
Right.
And then he went, good thing you didn't listen to me.
I was just going to say, so he knew when you started, and a good thing you didn't listen to me. Oh, that's
He just
awesome.
said it in a very dry way with a smile, like, good thing you didn't listen to me.
Nice.
He's a very funny guy. There was one time when we got done playing the Fillmore with Buddy, and by this time he was very comfortable with us. It was like the third time he jammed with us.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's known Buddy his whole life, so he knows Buddy's routine. Buddy leaves the stage, you know, gets in the limo, they get him out of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So when Buddy leaves the stage, they get him out of the building. Carlos is like, cool, I can dig in with Buddy's band for like 15 minutes. And he did. And we got done playing, and I remember him coming over to me and going, Frank, your playing is speaking to my soul, is touching my heart. I've listened to the whole show, and what are you using? And he was talking about my amplifier.
Yeah.
But I was playing a gold top Les Paul like he used to back in the day.
Yeah.
And I said, Carlos, I'm playing a gold top, you know, Les Paul like you used to. And he went, Frank, I make a lot of money on those Paul Reed Smiths. You know, like laughing with me like you are.
Yeah.
So he's a very funny dude. And also, I mean, think about that. You know, at 18, I'm reading this Carlos Santana article saying, man, maybe I should give up. I'm just starting.
Yeah.
And by the age of 32, he's saying these things to me.
Wow. How does that happen?
I don't know, James. I still don't know.
How does that happen?
I still don't know. But it did.
Yeah. And here you are, man.
Mm-hmm.
So from working with Buddy Guy, playing with Carlos Santana, where do you go from there?
Well, I think this is something that people just don't understand. And I think there's a few musicians. I think guys like Derek Trucks and some people really do get it.
Yeah.
If you're in Buddy Guy's band, you're staying in a really nice hotel. You're getting flown around. You're traveling in one of the best buses there are.
Yeah.
People are carrying your gear. And I would go back and do my own solo bands, and I always just was like so happy to be doing my band because I could kind of navigate the ship, you know, and do what I wanted to.
Yeah, yeah.
And people would see me carrying my gear and be like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? You should have someone doing that. Why? I don't need someone to do this. It's my band today. You know, it's not Buddy Guy's band. And so when I was off from Thursdays, I had, when I was home from Buddy's band, there was a jam band bar. It wasn't a jam band bar then, but it turned into it thanks to us and some others, called a Live One, which was on Halstead Street on the north side down from DePaul.
Okay.
And I started playing there on Thursdays when I wasn't in Buddy's band. And we would do a free show. And so it might be a couple Thursdays a month. It might be one Thursday a month. It might be the whole month. It might not be for a year. You know, It just kind of went like that.
Whatever.
And I started really having a great time at those all the time. And I was, you know, making a little bit of money, but not like I was making professionally.
Right.
And still found it, man, I'm looking more forward to these gigs where I'm carrying my stuff in and, you know, because I'm really enjoying this. Not that I wasn't enjoying Buddy, but I just like to point out to people that, you know, when you get to the top of the mountain, which Buddy definitely is in that game, and all the financial rewards are fantastic. If that's the only reason you're doing it for, it's going to catch up to you. And I know guys that were doing it for that reason, and it caught up to them.
Yeah.
Me, I'm just I can't believe it's something I would do on the couch for myself.
Right.
People pay me money to go and travel to and go do for them. to this very day. And I've been
Yeah.
doing it now for, gosh, professionally since I was 23, 24 years old.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this, Frank. When you step on the stage, okay, are you, how can I say this? Are you expressing who you are or discovering who you are in real time?
I'm definitely expressing who I am, and I'm letting the listener know in my own sort of way where I come from.
Ah,
Where I might do a Junior Wells song and then go into a Buddy Guy song and then nail 4 of mine to get play on Bluesville right after that.
nice.
Or do Feels Like Rain because I did it every night with Buddy and I had an opportunity to sit there while Buddy sang it, Bill Withers sang it, Susan Tedeschi sang it, Odetta sang it, Coco Taylor sang it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and there was something that hit me a couple of years after BB King died,
Hmm.
because I've always been able to kind of straddle. And again, it was because of the blues guys who told me
Right.
to do this. The Otis Rushes, the Lonnie Brookses, the Buddy Guys who told me, hey, man, you're white and you can rock. Straddle that line. Don't try to just be some guy playing the blues in clothes from 40 decades ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or 40 years
Yeah.
ago. Do you.
Yeah.
Find you. So
good advice.
when I started putting out my own music, I always had a bit of a rock edge to it because I was like, I don't really think I'm a blues band unless I'm trying to do a defined in my Chicago 12 bar.
Right.
And when I started putting out my own stuff, I sent it to the guys at BB King's Bluesville. They had a show called the Stone Blues Hour. The Stone Blues Hour was a perfect place for a band like Frank Bang and the Secret Stash at the time.
Oh, nice.
So I started getting airplay from them on their specialty show.
Oh.
And then I just kept sending them albums and I would show up. Like I'd find a way to get to DC to go do a live recording for them. And they always appreciated that, and I drop off a couple CDs and they just always kept adding me to more of that. And then somewhere around the Double Dare record, which I made in 20, I think it came out in 2011, no, 2013. When I put that out, they took everything a lot more seriously. Like, okay, we've had 3 or 4 releases from him now, and they started putting me in main rotation, and that kind of blew up. And then I kind of had this idea for a vanity project because I was, again, if we're going to define this on my definition, Frank Bang and the Secret Stash has always been a rock blues band.
Right.
And I would hear people say to me, well, he's a little too rockin', or he's, and they just give you an excuse for why they're not putting you on a festival or something like that.
Oh, okay.
So I went back home to Chicago and I made a record called Frank Bang and the Cook County Kings with all guys I grew up with.
Right.
We did it in one day. We didn't schedule it that way. We had 3 days in the studio done, but like a lot of live great blues records, if you work with the right guys, you can get them done in a day live in the studio.
Yeah.
And we did. And then I put it out as a bit of a vanity project. And then as soon as it came out, because I was kind of like had a chip on my shoulder, like, hey, man, I know where I'm from. I'm from Chicago, man.
Right.
Don't tell me what I can do with the blues kind of thing, And then it went to number 1 on Bluesville right out of the gate for like almost 12 weeks.
Wow.
And the ironic part about this, James, is here I am railing about, I can play the blues. I'm not just a rock guy.
Right.
You know who I got knocked off number 1 by?
Who?
The Rolling Stones when they put out a blues record.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, if you got to be knocked out, I guess that's who you have, right?
Yeah. And I mean, to think, it really straightened my head out on some thinking about some stuff.
Yeah.
Because, I brought up BB at the beginning of this story. And, when BB passed away, I realized how lucky I was to do those summer tours with him all those years.
Yeah.
And maybe there was a reason for that. And maybe it's not to pad my resume or to make an extra dollar. Maybe it's so that down the road sometime I'm playing the blues and maybe I turn someone on to this music, or they get passionate about it or fall in love with it. Maybe I have to carry that responsibility with me too, as
Pay it
being so
forward.
fortunate to have this life and these experiences.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
kind
think
of a
that,
way of paying it forward.
yeah, I think that's a big part of who I am and what I'm trying to do too, even though, I mean, I'm all me at the same time.
Well, when we were talking about Chicago roots and that grit, you know, growing up around Chicago's raw realities, how did hardship shape your sound and
Oh,
not just your story?
well, I've grown up around a lot of really not tough in the sense of, bravado where they're talking a lot of smack or
Mm-hmm.
flexing a lot of muscle, but I've grown up around a lot of tough and sometimes even violent people, because
Right?
it's the reality of Chicago. I
Yeah.
mean, who's been in Chicago, whose family's been in Chicago for the last 100 years, doesn't have those stories? We all
Right.
do,
Yeah.
you know? And I remember even my dad saying to me one time about, he was seeing me play and he was like, man, I don't know where you got this music talent from, and I don't feel like I helped you at all. And I'll say, Pops, you're there with me every time. Every time a promoter is trying to short me on a bill at the end of the night, you're there,
Yeah, I got that Chicago mentality.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not a big guy, but I'm
No?
still 6'1", 200 pounds, so I'm
There
not
you go.
exactly a small guy. And I would like to point out that the first job I had at Buddy Guy's was security at the door.
Oh,
you
man.
know, in the south side of in the south loop of Chicago.
Hello.
So,
Yeah.
and I
You
had that
paid your
job.
dues.
Yeah. So I think there's a bit of that in there.
Mm-hmm.
I've been really focusing on this lately because I'm putting out some new music.
Okay.
And now that I'm putting out some new music, I've had these conversations with these very profile producers now for the last 5-6 years while I've been waiting to put out some new music.
Yeah.
And they all have a nice thing to say, and some really even help me, guide the destiny of these songs and give me some tools to add to my box of tools for when I'm songwriting. But to this date, I've got 15 songs that have been featured on Bluesville in the last 20 years. And again, haven't put out a new record since 2015. Wow. So in 12 years or in 10 years, I had 15 songs featured on there from my releases, predominantly released on there, but they still get played to this very day. And I started realizing I produced those. I'm the guy who did all the cooking in the kitchen on those. And when I started pulling out some music that hadn't been released, and people were like, "This is great. What are you doing with it?" I'm like, waiting. I started realizing if I wasn't cooking up something good, those people don't have to. You hit up a record label, first thing they usually do is tell you no. They're like an insurance company.
Right.
They deny you at first a couple of times before you finally get in. And people weren't doing that. When I was sending them some of this new stuff that's coming out in the next couple of months, they were like, "This is great. What are you doing with it?" And I started realizing that I have to give myself a little bit of not bravado or cockiness, but an understanding that I have been the one cooking this in the kitchen. And everything's been coming out of my restaurant. You know what I mean?
Well, and that brings me up to my next question. There's a difference between playing the blues and earning the blues. So what does that difference feel like to you on like Buddy Guy and paying dues?
I'm a good friend with Larry McRae, and he's been not only a good friend, brother, we had the same manager for a while, but he's also been a mentor in so many ways. Okay. And we would talk about how, you just can't explain to some musicians how to play the blues in 30 years of experience. You can't explain that,
Right.
But when you know it, you know it. And at the same time, You know, like I currently have Sean Oakley playing bass in my band, who's 27.
Mm-hmm.
His grandfather started this little band you might have heard of called the Allman Brothers.
Yeah, I think I've heard of him. Maybe.
Yeah. So even though he's 27, he don't play the blues like he's 27. He plays it like he's a much deeper and older soul, which he is. He's even got a younger brother, James, who plays a little harmonica, occasionally comes and sits in with us. And I think James maybe just turns 21 in another week or so. But yet in that family of the Oakleys, Barry Dwayne Oakley, their father, Sean,
Mm-hmm.
James, their grandfather, Barry, who ironically was from Chicagoland area.
Yeah.
They all had it in them. And due to some level, you know, James might only be 20, but he's got some blues in him.
Right.
You know, and I don't know how that is. I don't know how that happens to certain people a certain way. But even when I took my first guitar lessons with a guy who was, you know, my high school buddy who was playing Eddie Van Halen and Alan Holdsworth, and I go take a guitar lesson with him, and he goes, "Man, maybe you should get into some blues stuff because your feel is very good."
Oh,
You know,
okay.
and I can't explain why or how or any of that, right? Like I don't.
Just
I'm
in
not
your
even
DNA.
Sure. Yeah. It's just part of who I am.
Now, working your way up inside Buddy Guy's legends to becoming Buddy Guy's, you know, guitarist, what did that journey teach you about patience versus hunger?
I think they're tied in.
Mm-hmm.
I think they coexist.
Yeah.
I think I'm a very patient 50-year-old man. I also think I'm the hungriest 58-year-old man you're ever going to see.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, I really think they're tied. They go hand in hand.
They're friends.
Yes.
Plain and simple.
Yes, there are the teeter-totter that occasionally bounces out and you get right, but there's always going to be that
one or the other.
That's the yin and yang of what anything could be in life.
Well, Frank, let me ask you this: what's something that you unlearned during your time with Buddy that made you a better artist? Like on the nature of the blues.
Yeah. When I first joined Buddy's band, I was mostly an ear-top player. And I had knowledge of music and the theory of music. And the first summer, we went on tour with B.B. King's band for the 2 months. And a bunch of other great bands too, like Susan Tedeschi and Tommy Castro and Corey Harris. And, you know, it was a great summer to go on tour. John Hyatt.
Oh, yeah.
And I started realizing the guys in BB's band, every single one of them had a musical education where they could basically talk about modes and scales, and conversations that would take me like a minute were taking those guys like 3-4 seconds. So when I got home from the road, I got a Casio piano and sat there and learned the rules of music. And I still do. I'm still working on stuff every day, even though no one would know it. Like no one comes to my show and says, you know, I just played Thursday. I was in West Palm, Florida, and Friday I was in Unadilla, Georgia, and Saturday I was in Tallahassee, Florida, and yesterday I was in Inglewood, Florida. Did like a nice big U of Georgia back on down, right? And one thing that was consistent from just women at the shows, older women at the shows, you know, that I wouldn't necessarily are my demographic.
Right.
There was a consistency with two of them that came up to me and said, you know, you just played everything so beautifully. And that's not an adjective I've ever used for me. Right. I never thought I made love to my guitar. I thought I kind of, you know, threw it on the ground and got rough with my guitar. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was more that kind of guy. Right. We're not making love. We're having sex with that guitar type of thing. And that I think comes from, you know, stepping back, because it would have been really easy to just go, hey, I got here. I could just be an ear-top player the rest of my life. Right. But I really did want to have conversations with guys like this instead of going, oh, wait, I got to think about that now. And then, oh, okay, yeah. And I think that's been a helpful thing for me too, even though I'm never really trying to be too complicated with stuff. Yeah. Well, and you know, earlier you were saying about blues. I mean, you as a musician,
you either get it or you don't, or you're always striving to. So if the blues can't be explained, why do you think so many people spend a lifetime trying to define it?
I think there's something about the vibrations in music, and the blues uses this thing called the flat third. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from the roots of the blues, the early roots of the blues, right?
Okay, yeah.
That can go all the way back to Jelly Roll Morton on the piano, or Robert Johnson on the guitar, or probably even the people that influenced them correctly, okay?
Right.
But modern society, white modern society, which they brought this music to, has been in love with that flat third for centuries. I think there's just something about that flat third, because I hear it. I know where it hits me when I hear it. And there's other notes on that scale that still mean something to me too. You know, I once had a guy try to tell me that if you play a B3 organ and you have two Leslie speakers and you go to the low B flat in the room, you'll see women kind of moving their chair a little bit.
Oh.
It's the vibration of a lot of this. And I think there is something about the vibration on a night when the sun's going down, you had a couple beers, or maybe you're just in need a good time, and something that music, all of a sudden it triggers something. And I think that's the vibration of life that maybe maybe we overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
I really think it boils down to that.
And when you hear that certain thing, it just like loosens you up and gets you moving.
Man, there's a guy that was from Chicago I never knew of called Luther Snakeboy Johnson. And I moved here to Florida, and my good friend Albert Castilla has been looking out for me ever since I moved here. I'm going to go see him tomorrow night with Bill Murray and the Blood Brothers and Mike Zito, my good friend Jimmy Vivino. And he took me to a music store, and we were listening to this guy, Luther Snakeboy Johnson, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the music was just hitting me, man. Like that Magic Slim thing. It was just hitting me. Like, who's this? He's like, Snakeboy Johnson. Never heard of him. Couldn't believe it, you know? This is my life. I've been studying this stuff. How do I not know this guy?
Yeah.
And then I do the research. I find out he played in Muddy Waters' band.
Oh.
How do I not know about this?
Yeah.
You know, and then I found out, this is a really quick story, that while he was living in Chicago in the 60s, he was on the South Side looking up girls' skirts under the L tracks. And he got caught and got a misdemeanor about it. And he moved to Boston and then died a few years later. So that's why I never knew about him in all this time in Chicago.
Okay.
But there's something about that music, though, that I'm so glad I discovered. It still feels like something fresh to me when I listen to it every day.
Something new.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when we talk about the blues, let me ask you this, Frank, your own personal opinion. Do you think that blues is more about pain remembered or pain still unresolved?
I honestly don't think it has anything to do with pain, James.
Yeah?
Yeah, man. It's about having a good time.
That's true. That's
It
true.
really is. It's really about having a good time. Now, if it brings up something like a heartbreak or something like that, that's your own personal thing, but that's something that maybe you're allowing to happen. Because
your own interpretation.
Yeah. Because when you come to a blues show at the Kingston Mines, they're playing till 4 or 5 in the morning. They can't put you to sleep.
No. They can't break your heart.
Right. So, you know, I once heard a line, I put it in a song I got coming out, where I saw this blues singer. I took a girl I was dating to go see this blues singer. Mm-hmm. And she came out and hit this note, and my girlfriend said, "Ooh, sounds like a heartbreak tonight." Well, you know, again, it's a great line, and I wrote a song about it. But at the same time, it was a feeling that it touched in her that, you know, that singer was letting out really before she even got to tell the story. Just the way the sound and the mood and everything went.
Set the stage.
Yeah.
Well, now your music has been described as dirty blues through a blown speaker. And what imperfections do you protect in your sound on purpose?
the live aspect of it. When we go in the studio, the live stuff just works for us. When I play stuff back to people later and they're like, what do you mean you guys didn't overdub anything on that? I'm like, no, it's actually the second take. And they're like, what? Or it's the first take. And they're always like, no way. I'm like, yeah. It's surrounding yourself with the right people, preparing them. You know, you go see a great comedian. He's been working on that set for a while before he dropped it on you.
Right.
And, you know, and it's the same thing with music. And I think if you do that, you go in prepared, you can go ahead and get the bleed of everybody and make it sound like a party the way it should.
Yeah. Well, now here's another question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance honoring legends like Muddy Waters or Howling Wolf while still refusing to sound like anyone else but yourself?
Well, you know, I do Hoochie Coochie Man, which is a Muddy Waters song, but I do it because I sat behind Buddy watching him do it. And Buddy would get into the whole, you would think Muddy was there if you closed your eyes. I can't do that.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I do like doing that song so we keep Muddy alive. At the end of one of my songs, The Blues Don't Care, which is a big hit for me, when we get to the outro, me and the band go into a Howlin' Wolf lick.
Ooh.
You know, so no one knows it except the listeners. Like, oh wait, I know that Spoonful they're doing. You know, or musicians.
Okay, yeah. So you're honoring them, but in your own little way.
Absolutely,
I like that. Now we're throwing out big names, and you've played with giants across the genres. What separates a technically great musician from someone who can command a room?
I think Miles Davis said it best. When you're a master of something, you can master everything that's about it. And I will see certain artists, I'm sure you have too, James, they walk into a room and I can't sit there and tell you what flips the switch for me per se.
Right.
But I know when I got my ring on and I got my big cowboy hat on and that light hits me in the face, whether it's, 30 people, 300 people, there's something that's going to take over that I'm enjoying and guiding, but not 100% in control of too. And I think that that's the factor that a lot of people forget is those artists have that kind of thing. I mean, Prince could go in on anything, Taj Mahal too.
Yeah.
You give Taj Mahal any instrument, he'll have the whole room quiet, listening to everything he's doing in seconds.
Yeah, no, that's a good way to put it too. Getting back to this, when you look out at an audience, what tells you that they're no longer just listening, but feeling?
You could see it, but you can also hear it. The room will get definitely quiet. I've been in rooms where I start playing a song by myself, and you can hear it, like they'll even tell themselves or the person they're hanging with, hold on, I want to be quiet here. Next thing you know, you've got all their attention. I remember one time a guy was giving me some static because when I first started working as a musician, I was working construction, and every time I go on tour, he'd put me back at the beginning of the construction crew. And even if I was working on building stairs with somebody, the next day I came back to work after a tour, I'd have to move wood. So I figured I'd invite this guy to a show, and he comes to the show and he was like, wow, man, I never knew you could do that. And I was like, do what? He goes, there was women next to us. And I know this is just a fantasy. He's like, but it was almost like you were getting them excited and giddy. and you don't even know these women. I'm like, yeah, no, that's the thing as a performer that if you realize working at that club, man, I saw it every night. Yeah. Johnny Guitar Watson put the greatest show I ever saw on in the place. And I mean, that says a lot for all the miles I logged at Legends. That one comes to me right away. But Johnny Guitar Watson was a force. And when he got out there, he played like a couple notes. He just held up the guitar and did a dance thing. And I think he was like 70 some years old at the time. Yeah. Man, some of the finest Finest African American women I've ever seen in my life completely lost their stuff over this, man. It just,
Wow.
I can't explain it, but once you see it, and there's certain people, I think that's the thing. They know how to flip that switch and takes them to a place that they didn't even really know we were going to go.
A force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Now, Frank, if someone walks away from your show changed, inspired, even slightly, what do you hope changed in them?
Well, if I hear it on a regular basis, and it's usually that people are like, I can't wait to come see you again, or, oh, I never knew who you were, and I can't wait to see you again. And that's kind of a common thing in the blues, so I never take it personal.
Yeah.
But it happens every night. And
Wow.
by a large number of people, they take the time to come up and say that to you at the merch stand. So that makes me feel pretty good about the whole situation. Let me know that they're buying in on what I'm selling, and all I'm really selling is the music from where I come from.
Now, years from now, Frank, and I'm saying years from now, when the amps go quiet, what do you want people to say about Frank Bang and what he gave to the blues that wasn't there before?
It's funny because, when you get into this, you don't think about these things. And now I'm 58 and seeing so many people. And I guess I'd just be happy if they said anything.
Yeah.
Because
just be remembered.
Yeah. I know that there's people to me that mean a lot to me that people don't know. Mm-hmm. And I get that. And if that story starts to be told, I do enlighten them on people that they didn't really know about,
Okay.
Things like that. And I hope for the same.
Nice. I like that. Now, we got a show coming up.
May 7th,
7 p.m. at the American Legion, 835 West Broadway in Bradley, Illinois. For those who are going to be coming out
May 7th
in Bradley, what kind of night are they going to be stepping into? And what kind of person might they be when they walk back out?
Well, they're definitely going to be a blues fan and a Frank Bang fan for sure after that. And I would hope, because I was talking to Scott about this a couple times ago, and he was asking me, how do I get some of these younger people involved and things like that? Because when I do get them involved, they really like it. And I think that's the thing, everyone's blues experience is a little personal. What turns you onto the blues is probably going to be different to me, James.
Right.
But at the same time, that's where I think we all come together. And, man, I love coming to Bradley. I've been doing Friends of the Blues since they started the series years ago.
Right.
And it's always great to see some new folks. It's always great to see some folks that have seen me all the times I've gone there. So, I mean, we kind of leave it all out there. So I can guarantee that.
Well, there you go. So there's your reason, folks. Come on out.
May 7th.
You're going to think it's a Saturday night on a simple weekday night because it again, going back to the greats, they always, especially a lot of the great side guys I work with, they would talk about how people were there to be entertained. Nobody wants to see you just do guitar solos. They want to sing a song and sing along. They want to be entertained.
Moved.
Yeah. And when I would ask my buddies, how was so-and-so show? What'd you think of this? Guys I really grew up respecting, they would point that out to me. Don't forget to entertain these people because that's the reason they left the house that night. And think about that, James. They're leaving the house to come see us.
Yeah.
How cool is that? You want to be able to, so I love that. So you want to be able to give something back. And that's a good show. Great show.
Well, I'll tell you what. I want to thank you for your time and your patience. I'm looking forward to your show on May
7th
at the American Legion, 7 p.m., folks. Get there early, and you'll get to talk with Frank and get to hear some music, perhaps get moved, get entertained, and bring something home with you that you didn't bring with you to begin with.
Amen, brother.
Like that. Well, I'll tell you what, we did a good intro for you. We're going to do a good outro for you as well. All right. So
thank you, James.
Hey, man, it's what we do. What we experienced right here, folks, wasn't just music. It was testimony. and proof that blues is still alive, still dangerous, still honest enough to cut through everything we tried to hide behind. Frank Bang doesn't just carry the tradition, he challenges it, stretches it, reminds us why it mattered in the first place. From Chicago streets to the stages across the world, and now right here in Bradley, Illinois, this is what happens when talent meets the truth and the truth refuses to be quiet. And if you weren't moved at this very moment, you better check your pulse, folks, because if you were there, then you already understood. On behalf of the Friends of the Blues concert series, thank you for being part of something real, and just hang on to that feeling, folks. And remember, the blues never apologizes. Come out May
7th.
See Frank Bang and get blown away, man, and entertained and walk out a different person. So there you are, Frank. How's that?
That was fantastic, James. Thank you, brother.